This is Math 96, Quiz 4 Topics. Factoring a multivariate polynomial by grouping. So we have 4 different examples. The first 2 are from problem type 1 and the next 2 from problem type 2. It says factor by grouping. uv minus 7u minus 4v plus 28. So usually when I factor by grouping, I look for a greatest common factor between the first 2 terms and a greatest common factor between the last 2 terms. And so in the first 2 terms, I see that both of those have a u, and so I factor u out, and using the distributive property, I have left v minus 7. In the second 2, I notice that each of these is divisible by 4, and so if I factor out a 4, I would be left with negative v plus 7. Okay, my goal is to have what's in the parentheses look exactly the same. So you notice that the v and the 7 are there in both cases, and yet the signs are wrong on this second set. And so really I would like to take out a negative 4 from these second 2 terms, and then that will make this a positive v and a negative 7 on the inside, so that these 2 sets of parentheses will be the same. So let's rewrite that as u times the quantity v minus 7, and then minus 4 times the quantity v minus 7. All right, now look at this as 2 terms being subtracted, and look for a greatest common factor between those 2. You notice that in this first set, it has v minus 7, and the second set also has v minus 7. So if I factor out the v minus 7, that would leave me with u minus 4. And so if you want to check if you've done this correctly, you could simply FOIL these 2 binomials to make sure that they equal your original polynomial. Let's move on to the second one. 4y plus 5xy minus 12 minus 15x. Again, let's group our first 2 terms and our last 2 terms. So the first 2 terms, it looks like the only thing they share is a y. So let's factor out the y, and using our distributive property, we have 4 plus 5x left over. You notice that both of these second terms, I should say the third and the fourth term, are negative, and so let's actually factor out a negative this time. And 12 and 15 could both divide by 3. So if we factor out a negative 3, that would leave us with a positive 4 and a positive 5x. And we notice that we have the same thing in these 2 sets of parentheses, so that's good, that's our goal. Now looking at this first portion as a term and the second portion as a term, they share a common factor of 4 plus 5x. We factor that out, the 4 plus 5x, and using the distributive property, we would have the y minus 3 remaining. And so that's our answer for this one. Okay, moving on to our third example. Let's look at those first 2 terms and last 2 terms and try to find their greatest common factor. 18w minus uw, it would be w, and that would leave us with 18 minus u. And then the next 2 terms, 2w squared and 9u, don't appear to have any common factors at all, and so in that case we would factor out a 1, and we'd be left with 2w squared minus 9u on the inside. You notice that these are not at all alike, and so this is a problem. In order to be able to use this factor by grouping, we want what's in the parentheses to be the same. And so to address this problem, we can simply rearrange the terms and try again. So let's just try switching these 2 middle terms and make this 18w plus 2w squared minus uw minus 9u. All right, now we look for greatest common factor with the pairs. So 18w and 2w squared both have 2w as a factor. That would leave us with 9 plus w. And then these two are both negative, so we know we want to take out a negative number. And both of them have a u, so let's take that out. And we'd have w and plus 9. Okay, even though these are in different order, they actually are the same thing. So 9 plus w or w plus 9, that's a common factor between the first part and the second part of this expression. So let's take out that common factor of 9 plus w, or w plus 9, and then that would leave us with 2w minus u as our final answer there. Okay, this is another one of the same type. If we look at the first two terms and factor out the greatest common factor of x, we'd have 36 plus y. In the second two, we'd have, let's see, just a negative 1. And so that'd be 9x squared plus 4y. That does not look good because those do not match. So again, let's try rearranging these two middle terms. 36x minus 9x squared plus xy minus 4y. Okay, now, first two and last two. Our greatest common factor, the first two, I noticed that 9 goes into both of these, and x. So let's take out 9x. That would leave 4 minus x. And the next two, we have a common factor of y. So that would leave x minus 4. These are the same except that their signs are different. And so I think I'd like to make the signs the same. So let's take out a negative y in this second set, and then that would give us a negative x and a positive 4. And so if we rearrange the second part, it would say minus y times 4 minus x. Now we can factor out the 4 minus x from the first part and the second part, leaving us with 9x minus y. And so this would be our final answer.